The importance of a well-written, highly collaborative present education levels section of the IEP was discussed in the previous module. In this module, we will review how to take the information from the present education levels to help write measurable post-school goals. The student's IEP must contain appropriate measurable post-secondary goals based upon age-appropriate transition assessments related to future education and/or training, employment, and, when appropriate, independent living skills. Post-secondary goals are a vital part of the IEP. In this module, we will review the importance of having appropriate post-secondary goals and provide you with a formula for writing high-quality goals for the 3 adult outcome areas. By the end of this module, you'll be able to develop appropriate measurable post-secondary goals for education and training, employment, and independent living using this goal writing formula.
Post-secondary goals are a vital part of the IEP. The student's IEP must contain appropriate measurable post-secondary goals based upon age-appropriate transition assessments related to further education and training, employment, and, where appropriate, independent living skills. These goals need to be updated each year, and it should be clear that these updates have been made and are reflective of assessment data. These 3 elements directly align with items 3, 4, and 5 on the Indicator 13 checklist and file review questions 290 and 291, as well as 289. Under each goal area, you will also list services, activities, and courses of study supporting that goal. We'll discuss the rest of the transition grid in the next module. So, what are post-secondary goals? Post-secondary goals must be measurable or countable, and they must identify a specific outcome for the student to occur in the future, after high school. They do not define a process that is or will occur while still in school. Measurable post-secondary goals are not to be confused with measurable annual goals, or MAGs. But while both need to be measurable, I do want to take a minute just to clarify the difference between measurable post-secondary goals and measurable annual goals. Those will be discussed during a later section of this training. Now, the chart here shows some key differences between the 2 sets of goals. So you can see that post-secondary goals are long-term, while MAGs are more short-term. Post-secondary goals must be focused on the 3 key transition areas of education and training, employment, and independent living, while MAGs should be focused on specific skill areas that the student needs to improve now to allow them to meet those future post-secondary goals. Post-secondary goals must be written in terms of where the student will be after graduation, while MAGs are written to address the current needs, settings, and situations of the students. There are 2 separate formulas to use for writing each type of goal. We'll review the formula for post-secondary goals in just a bit, and you'll learn about the MAGs formula during that module. Finally, post-secondary goals are often written more broadly and become more narrow as the student's future plans become more clear. MAGs are always written in a very specific manner to allow for easy and immediate progress monitoring.
Although there are some differences between these 2 sets of goals, there are some very important connections. In the IEP, next to each post-secondary goal area, there is a measurable annual goal box in which the IEP team should document measurable annual goals that have been developed that are in direct support of the post-secondary goal areas by circling or checking yes in this box. The measurable annual goal will be further developed in a later section of the IEP to include some short-term objectives if appropriate, how student progress will be measured, and when reports on student progress will be provided to the parent. Again, these measurable annual goals should be in direct alignment with and in support of the post-secondary goals we have set for the student after graduation. Post-secondary goals must be based on age-appropriate assessments and results and information presented in the previous assessment and present levels of education sections of this training. There must be an appropriate measurable post-secondary goal or goals for education and training, employment, and if needed, independent living. Further, and more importantly, goals must be in direct alignment with the hopes, dreams, and preferences of the student and the family. The post-secondary goals are the final destination, where the student wants to end up, and the rest of the IEP is the path by which the student will get to that destination. Some questions an IEP team might ask to help ensure these appropriate post-secondary goals include the following. Do the post-secondary goals directly reflect the age-appropriate assessments and data presented in the present education levels? Where is the student going to work or engage in productive activities after graduation? Where and how is the student going to continue to learn and or develop his or her skills after graduation? Where is the student going to live and how is he or she going to access adult services, participate in the community, and have fun after graduation? Finally, does the student require assistance regarding personal safety, protection from abuse, self-advocacy, or self-awareness? If yes, then an independent living goal is necessary for that student. These in-depth questions are so important. In the materials for this module, you'll find a chart with these essential questions. Another incredibly important piece to remember is to always be supportive.
Always be supportive. Even if their goal seems a little far-fetched, support them. Let them chase their dreams in life.
Here's a very easy to follow way to write a good post-secondary goal based on your answers to these questions. Where is the student going to work or engage in productive activities after graduation? Where and how is the student going to continue to learn and develop skills after graduation? And where is the student going to live and how is he or she going to access adult services, participate in the community, and have fun after graduation? Notice the following about this formula. Notice the key words after high school, after graduation. Notice the focus on the student and a behavior. And then notice how we're specifying where and how the student will complete or engage in that behavior. It's very important to ensure that post-secondary goals are reviewed and updated as needed each year based on new assessment data and results. Student interests, preferences, skills, and abilities will grow and change and become more refined over time. We need to ensure that we're making relevant changes to post-secondary goals that align with this growth of the student. We can't overemphasize the importance of making post-secondary goals directly aligned with what's essential to the youth. While we, in quotes, the IEP team and supporting adults are often focused on those 3 adult outcome areas of education and training, employment, and independent living, students, on the other hand, are often focused on what they're good at, what they like, what they don't like, where they see themselves after high school. To begin the conversations with youth about setting goals, a great question to ask the youth is, what are you ready to achieve right now? Continually ask this question and make changes based on their answers. This can help ensure goals are in alignment with the hopes and dreams of the youth. So now we're going to look at our example and revisit the case study with Allison. Please pause the video here and review pages 1 and 2 of Allison's case study, which you've seen before. This is found in the materials for this module. We'll look at sample goals in each adult outcome area based on Allison's interests, preferences, strengths, and needs. All right, now that we've reviewed and got a little refresher on Allison's case study, first we're going to focus on Allison's employment goal. Now, we must directly connect it to the employment-related assessment data from her present education levels. Our question for this area that we need to be able to answer for Allison is, where is she going to work or engage in productive activities after graduation? So before we dig into Allison's goal for employment, though, let's hear about some other tips for determining how youth can think about their plans for career and work in the future.
If we've done all this thinking about what our strengths, our goals are, a little bit about our goals, but not like super specific, the next thing we want to do is try to put those into 3 buckets. I'm going to use that analogy a little bit. So we can think about all these things that we're good at and we're interested in and our disability. And we want to focus that in on, so if I'm interested in something specific and this is my strength, what are some jobs and careers that are out there? So maybe I love working with people and I like teaching people. So maybe I want to work in a school. What are the jobs and careers that are out there? Maybe I want to be an astronaut. How do I make that happen? People talk about that and they say like, oh, everyone wants to be an astronaut, but there are so many jobs in science and math and technology that go into that process, right? You might not be on the moon, but you might be working on the rocket that gets people there. It's just, so don't focus yourself in on just one area. There's kind of so much out there that you can look at and think about. And the way you do that is just start thinking about what you're interested in, what you're really good at.
Now that we've heard some great ideas about how to connect youth interests with potential career paths, we're going to look at the example for Allison. So here is one example goal for Allison regarding employment. So after earning her 4-year degree, Allison will obtain full-time employment working with children. 2 more good examples of appropriately written employment goals would be after high school, Jan will open a small business creating jewelry. Another good example would be after high school, Chris will work as a forklift driver at Home Depot or Lowe's. Now, some non-examples, some not so good employment goal examples that we do see quite often would be Sydney needs to learn computer and time management skills. Another not so great example that we do see would be John needs to complete courses in automotive career and technical education. Think about why those goals are not appropriate post-secondary goals. You probably noticed that those goals I just stated are still focused on student current needs and courses of study. Now, it is important to set those goals based on students' experiences, abilities, hopes, and dreams. So now that we, keep thinking about our hopes and dreams, we're going to focus on future education and training. Before we look at Allison's goals or example goals for Allison, we're going to hear from a few folks about post-secondary education goals and experiences.
And I think that third component we want to always start thinking about a little bit, not that we have to have it all figured out, is so if we want a specific job or career, do we need more training after high school? And that doesn't have to be college, right? That could be going to a voc center, a vocational school where you learn specific job skills. It could be numerous different things after high school. It's not just college. But the idea is that if you start thinking about what your dream job would be, or maybe a job you just want to have, and the training you might need to get it, and then where you want to live and how you want to live. So what I just mentioned here, these are really the 3 core things of what we call your transition goals.
So remember, we need to directly connect the goal for education and training back to assessment data from our present education levels. So our question for this area was, where and how is the student going to learn and develop skills after graduation? So here is an example goal for Allison for education and training. And this is based, again, on her interests, preferences, and strengths, right from her present education level section. So after graduation from high school, Allison will enroll in a 4-year college and pursue a bachelor's degree in child development. Another good example of an appropriate education and training goal would be after high school, Rachel will attend Texas A&M University in the Informational Technology program. Some non-examples of education and training goals that we do see might include Darcy needs instruction in functional reading and mathematics. Another not so great example would be Savannah needs to complete necessary coursework for graduation with a regular diploma. So those are not good examples of post-secondary education and training goals because, again, they're descriptions of present needs and related activities or services that would immediately address the needs while the student is still in high school. And now we'll look at our final area, independent living. And we'll start out by hearing some different options for independent living.
So the other two things we want to think about when we're doing our transition goals is where and how we want to live. And that looks different for everyone. There is no right one way to do that. Whatever independent looks like for you, you're going to define it. You're in charge of that. So some people might live with family, by themselves. They might live with friends. And that's probably going to change throughout your whole life.
Independent living might not be an area of need for every student. Remember that we must base our post-secondary goals on relevant and age-appropriate assessment results. If our assessments indicate that a student does not need an independent living goal, we need to state that in the present education level section of the IEP. However, if assessment results show that a student will need support, services, or specially designed instruction to help them reach independent living goals, we need to have a goal here. A question mentioned earlier: does the student require assistance regarding personal safety, protection from abuse, self-advocacy, or self-awareness? This question can help us make this determination when reviewing the assessment data. For example, if results of a self-determination assessment indicate that a student needs some additional improvement with self-determination and self-advocacy skills, then an independent living goal should be included. Our question for this area was, where is the student going to live and how is he or she going to access adult services, participate in the community, and have fun after graduation? So for Allison, here are some possible examples of independent living goals for this student based on her present education levels. So after high school, Allison will self-advocate for accommodations in college. And also after high school, Allison will use strategies to effectively manage her time so that she successfully meets her deadlines for college. Some other examples and not so good examples might be the following. So a good example would be after high school, Bill will learn to cook a simple meal in the Reach Adult Day training program with one-to-one support staff. Some non-examples, some not so great examples would be that Joey needs adult assistance to travel in the community, Guy needs to develop self-advocacy skills, or Rayvon needs to learn to use public transportation. These three goals that I just mentioned here are not great examples because they're missing the where and how components of the behaviors we want the student to be able to do. Finally, let's hear a little more about the importance of individualized independence for students.
Independence is whatever you define that as. So independence is what the level of support you need, what do the goals look like in your life and how you set them.
We know you may have additional questions regarding best practices for writing compliant and meaningful measurable post-secondary goals. Please see the Frequently Asked Questions, or FAQ document, that's also posted in the resources section for this module.
Please take some time to participate in the discussion board to answer the following questions. What are some ways we can ensure that students' measurable post-school goals are in alignment with their preferences, future plans, and dreams? Also think about what are some ways we can help students, parents, and family members, and school personnel who may have unrealistic goals or expectations, either too high or too low.
So in summary, here are key points to remember about measurable post-secondary goals. All three areas must have a post-secondary goal unless assessment data indicates that a goal for an area is not needed. These goals must be measurable or countable. Goals must be as specific as possible and should list an adult outcome after high school. That's not currently a process that's occurring. We must review and update post-secondary goals each year, and updates should be in direct alignment with new assessment data. And although it's our responsibility to meet students' unique needs and prepare them for further education, employment, and independent living, students and their families must drive this goal-setting process. Students are ultimately responsible for meeting the goals after graduation, and therefore they should have the loudest voice at the table to ensure that their goals are in direct alignment with their own hopes and dreams for the future. Thank you so much for watching our Measurable Post-School Goals module, and the next module will cover the transition grid.